to this week's episode of Lessons to My Younger Self with me, your host, Kiren Bhardwa. And this week, I have the most gorgeous host with me, and I'm so grateful to have her here. Colleen Grady is a Kundalini educator that has been studying this energy through various approaches and modalities for the last 7 years. And so she's taken all of her diverse studies and experiences and created Kundalini Arts, which is essentially a comprehensive training that supports others in finding their own unique relationship with this life force energy and awakening their spiritual gifts. So I want everyone to welcome Colleen. Yay!
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. I feel very honored to be your first guest on the podcast.
Yes, I'm so honored too, because we've spoken so many different times, not only just in person in Bali, but of course, catching up virtually online. And so I'm really grateful to have you here to especially speak about something so powerful like Kundalini activation, especially because that's the same modality that I operate in. And so it's always really great to speak to other facilitators in this space and just hear their experiences and what called them into this energy and into this field. So yeah, super grateful and excited to have you here. And yeah, I guess that brings me into my first question. What Tell us a little bit about your journey. What brought you into the arts and the world of Kundalini?
Mhm. Yeah, so when I was like a preteen and wanted to grow up, I wanted to be a yoga teacher. That was like my dream job. So I feel like I've always kind of been following the same thread. It
Yeah.
actually hasn't changed or gone in any different direction. Maybe it's just more deeply unraveled, like the next step of what was there on that journey. So actually 10 years ago when I first started teaching yoga, I knew I wanted to be in the world of Kundalini, but I wasn't also quite ready for it. I feel I was really connected to Kundalini yoga at that time, and that was really the outlet that I was seeing it. I didn't realize there was all these other experiences and ways of working with Kundalini, but there was always something I was very drawn to about Kundalini yoga teachers. There was a magnetism, a grace, an authenticity, and like a courageousness that I always wanted to be in their presence. I feel like I was just kind of following, this pull about Kundalini, and I wasn't quite ready for it though. Like, I feel like these years of just really focusing on more traditional yoga and building the foundations of my body were really important, as well as working on myself and really getting to open myself up to these new ways of exploring being and these new aspects of yourself. And I remember even with Kundalini yoga, there's still a lot of really like giving yourself over to a practice or giving yourself to the energy or giving yourself even to the collective field of energy that you're moving. And although it's different than Kundalini activation, it still was such a powerful feeling and also a very vulnerable feeling as well, of
Mm.
really like letting go of control. And
Yeah.
so, after a few years of just being in the traditional yoga space, then I started studying Kundalini yoga. And I was like really deep in the Kundalini yoga space. And then I also kind of took what I learned from Kundalini yoga and I found someone that was doing some types of energetic body work. And they were living in Bali at that time and they became my really close friend. And I ended up supporting a lot of their work. And that was the first kind of point I had seen these bodies really open up and express energy. Like I was already tapping into it with Kundalini yoga, but there was a totally different wildness with just letting energy run through your body. And so I was really interested in how can I have that experience. And at that time, there wasn't like Kundalini activation. I don't even know if it was like an actual thing then yet that we see in like the modern day brands of what's kind of been created.
Mm.
So I got really curious and studied a lot of different ways to move energy in my body. And I just started really implementing that and just spending a lot of time getting to know my own system, kind of putting together all of what I had learned from yoga, Kundalini yoga, energetic body work. I worked with a lot of like breath work, emotional release, plant medicines, kind of the whole gamut of it. And just really the biggest teacher, though, out of all the things was my own body. It was the time I spent within my own system, really getting to know that. And then, yeah, the first time I ever gave someone a massage, they were like flying on the ceiling. So it was like as soon as I just started to tap into working in people's bodies that way, it was very natural that that was happening for me, that I was
Mm,
already really giving this transmission without realizing that I was doing it, without
yeah.
really having learned it, or it felt like just a natural overflow of the cultivation I had had within myself and within the cultivation I had had with the energy. So, yeah, it's been a lot of taking different outlets and just taking different teachings and then putting them into my body, seeing how that feels, working with the own cultivation, and then just continuing to work with that and be guided by that and refine that
Mm,
over the years is really what the process is. I never took necessarily a Kundalini activation training or anything like that. It was just a very natural process for me how it evolved. And I think my system had a lot of like already the maybe soft skills and the skills of being able to read bodies very well, being able to see all of the subtle things happening. I already had a big capacity um, since also I had such a deep experience in my own body, I feel like I could understand things in other people's bodies better. So it's like from this own self-mastery and self-understanding of my system, when something's moving or I can start to perceive something within someone else's body, I was really like sharp in that because I think that it was like I really fine-tuned my body so well that then I can really finely tune and work on someone else's body through that kind of mirroring because whatever's happening within the field, within someone else's system, when I can feel and perceive within my system how that's going, then I'm getting feedback of where to direct it or what's needed or what's actually happening. So it really created yeah, it created like all of the wealth of information, all of the
yeah.
wealth of understanding of yeah, how to do this work through all of these explorations.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's there were so many nuggets that I picked up as you were doing so. The main one being that fully groundedness in your own body being the key to really being able to discern what's happening when you are facilitating with someone
Mhm.
else. So would you say for yourself as a facilitator, because I'm aware that, when you are exploring these modalities, especially as a facilitator, your gifts start to unlock even more. And so you become even more sensitive and intuitive, empathic. And would you say that when you give a transmission that you feel what's happening to someone else within your own body? Or would you say that you just get a felt sense of what's going on and then you're able to read and then do what it is that you need to do?
I would say that there's a lot of variance to it.
Mm,
So in my beginning stages of working, I feel I also worked one-to-one to start, and I think that was really helpful for me getting to know other people's bodies even well, and me just testing out everything that I felt
yeah.
like I intuitively knew but maybe couldn't intellectually define. In the beginning stages, I feel like I could feel into people's bodies more.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I don't as much. So I think I've turned down a little bit that ability. And I'm also not upset about that. I actually think that's a very good thing for me at this point because my
Yeah.
sessions are quite big. And so I also don't think I have capacity to feel to the depths with a one when I was just working one-to-one as I would do with 20 people in the room because
Yeah.
I'm very, very open and very, very sensitive in myself in general. So I think that's like a healthy, refinement of my capacity in these different ways. But I think that there's probably more leaning into claircognizance of knowing what's
Yeah.
happening and just from experience, being able to maybe even just physically see small things or energetically feel and know. I feel that we all have different like sense faculties within our system. Everyone's is there's variance within that. And I think everyone's work together in their own unique way too. So one person's way of perceiving, like they might have five different gifts that are just a little bit online that all come together to give them the information that's coming through. And I have noticed as well is that I think there's different bodies, and I tell this to my facilitators too. There's different bodies that you might be able to read better or be in more connection with too. Like I think when people are more in like a similar frequency, or maybe you're closer to them in these other ways, it's easier to perceive and see things in certain ways. And I just had another example of this. That's why I was paused for a second.
Yeah.
Um, like another way this was really interesting for me, I perceive a lot through sound. And I've always perceived a lot through sound, and that's only been amplified working with energy more. And when I was home in the United States, the level I could perceive through sound felt like it was so much greater. And I think that's because it was the first time in many years I had been around American English speakers. Like I hadn't been home to America in 3 years, and I haven't been home that many times within the last 10 years. But since I was around all of my culture where there's a lot of familiarity, I could hear different things and their voice energetically about them. And that was to a level that I wouldn't probably be able to perceive as deeply if it was like British English. Like I could perceive some, but my mother tongue, like my mother, like the familiarity of the,
Yeah.
the voices and the accents of where you're from, what you've been around, I could get even more information out of that. Yeah, which was really, really interesting. It was like an interesting thing for me to experience on my own when I was there back in the US.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it must have been so much information all the time, that you're picking up. And so, how did you manage that even in your own system? Was it kind of like water off a duck's back now, or is it like, oh my God, they're saying hey, but really they don't mean hey, whatever it might be, you're reading between the lines on such a deeper level.
Mhm. I think I have a good attitude of not getting involved with things. I have a lot of boundaries. So yeah, I can perceive things and be like, nope, that's not what I want to like continue to tune into or be with, or no, I can't listen to that voice. Like I'm pretty good at like having, yeah, boundaries between me and what's happening just to keep my own self safe from being overloaded or overstimulated. Um, yeah, so I think I can handle it pretty well, but it's through boundaries.
We'll definitely get into that more later on in our conversation. What I'm really, really curious about is just this new landscape of Kundalini activation. And I say new landscape because for me, since becoming a facilitator that went through the training, it's been really interesting to see how many others have picked it up through different schools. And we say that it's a new modality in comparison to something like Kundalini yoga and Kundalini breath work. But my felt sense is that this gift has been around for quite some time. But it was only those individuals that had mastered their own Kundalini that could actually receive it and understand it, because of that element of self mastery that exists, i.e., sages in India or wherever, even like places like China that was focusing on chi and so on. And so I'm really curious to hear your experience, but also what's the difference between Kundalini activation for you versus something like Shaktipat, where someone is coming and, awakening that energy in that way?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of, I think more than even maybe just in traditional like Indian cultures that it's more written about, we have more context and information around how this energy is used and transmitted. I think it was really used cross-culturally in so many different ancient civilizations, but it
Yeah.
maybe wasn't recorded as well as I think that's one of the beautiful things about so many different Indian philosophies is it's very well recorded.
Mm.
So we have access to that, but I think that it was definitely used in, I'm sure other Mayan cultures in Egypt and different pagan cultures throughout Europe. Like, I don't think that they were also um, not in access with this, because also if we think about the thing that blocks us the most from being in our from really opening our energy to more Kundalini is usually that emotional stuckness and stagnant. And I just think today we're so overstimulated with information and emotions and stress and like responsibility that I don't think people
Mm.
were as overstimulated in earlier times as we
Yeah.
are today. Not that there wasn't stress, but it was a bit more simple of a life than the complexity of modern day living. So I think it would have been even more accessible and natural in
Mm.
other people's bodies across the world. Now, what I will say is that I feel like also everyone has a little bit different way of transmitting energy. So I think that when I look at the defining aspects between like Kundalini activation and Shaktipat, I think there can be different variations within transmission, but again, that there's so much variance between practitioner, there's so much variance between ashram of how they do it for just like the conduit itself, the person itself is going to have variance. But I think the big difference is the devotional qualities that go into Shaktipat, where I think with modern day Kundalini activation, people often treat it like it's maybe a massage or it's something a little bit more. mm, it just maybe doesn't have the respect of the sacredness that I think it just could be like a massage, like it's something physical. Like here, I'm just doing my job, touching the body in these places, and tuck, 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 it's done. Instead of really this cultivation of relationship with the
Mm.
divine and the surrender to the divine, and yeah, having this deep level of respect and reverence to what we're working with. And I think that gets taken out of the conversation a lot within Kundalini practices. And if we're just continually taking, taking, taking from the divine, well, then what is that like infusion of frequency that you're transmitting out, right? Because in totally, it's not in like a way of reciprocity with the divine. It's not in a way of always this open-heartedness with the divine.
Mm.
It can be a bit just this energy of taking, and then I think that's where it can get a little bit more gray in a sense of like using it for personal power or for showing off or thinking that they're the ones that are running the show, that they're the ones doing it. Like it can mess with your head a little bit when you don't have this other higher aspect that you're looking at it from and connecting to it through.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said it in that way. It's so powerful, and I completely agree with everything that you shared. And equally, yeah, you're right. Just in the conversations that we do have, especially how Kundalini activation has become more mainstream, it does take away that reverence because you are working with Shakti, you're working with the divine feminine in all its forms through all the different ancient civilizations that has existed before our time, and that exists in present day, even within ourselves. And when we do that, we kind of distort what's actually being transmitted in this way, in a very masculine way, if that makes sense, in my opinion. Like we're not doing it in the flow and the surrender, and we're working with the divine and co-creation. It's very much like, you give me this, I'll give you that, you know
Mhm.
and in that transactional way, that's what I mean by masculine.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel that it's that way. And, I think people maybe they don't have the right. And another caveat to that too is I think when we look at more traditional forms of sharing this energy, there's a really long path of cultivation for it.
Yeah.
And I think also the path of cultivation to be a Kundalini facilitator could be a little bit longer, you know, because I see so many times, and this happens also, let's just say in the yoga space, you take a yoga teacher training and then you don't practice as much yoga for yourself. You're kind of like, all right, I got the skill, check. And
Yeah.
now I just teach and do that. And I think that can also happen with Kundalini. And there's a really quite a long road to purify and to clear the body of our own stuff that we've collected through this lifetime and through past lifetimes. And I don't think that it has to be about purification your whole life, but there should be a couple of years for really purifying your body and purifying your own energy field. And I think that should also feel exciting and inspiring for people's own journey because I got also really into this because I loved healing myself because I had a lot of things in myself I wanted to work through. And
Yeah.
that's the greatest gift that I've gotten is all my own self change. That's what I was number one here for is my own path. And I think it can get a little bit too quick in a way of, oh, I'm a leader, but how long have you been a student before there? And
Mm,
I do think that's one of the values also of Shaktipat that kind of get lacking too from the modern Kundalini
yes.
activation space.
Ooh, yes, because you shared something that I am in such deep reverence with and understand so much, even on my own journey to an extent. And funnily enough, when I was in Bali, I went to a talk with Gil the Grid from a mentee, and it was so powerful because it was saying how there's so many of us that learn something and then we think we can automatically teach it. But the truth is that wisdom takes time. And now,
Mhm.
time isn't also synonymous with wisdom, by the way. There are many people that have been in this space for years that lack wisdom because they're not harnessing the lessons, they're not alchemizing their lessons into their own way of being. And that's
Mhm.
not from a place of judgment, it's just from a place of what it is. And I think we as a society need to step back um, and really sit with the medicine, sit with our journey, sit with, what is it that we are doing? Why do we want to do it? What do we want other people to receive if we are doing these things such as transmissions or holding a yoga class, etc., even sound healing, anything.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's really necessary because how can you get the richness and the ripeness of the fruit if you yourself have not even sat with that fruit yourself?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's sad because I think that you also miss out on a lot of the beauty for yourself because this is such a transformative path. And yeah, it can be challenging for sure, but
yeah.
it's like the person that you're becoming is so fulfilling and lighter and more bright and more of your true essence comes through, more of your soul can come through. And that's also what so many people are deeply seeking. So when you also don't kind of direct yourself towards that cultivation of just coming more into your soul, then that's also sad for you that you're missing that too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really funny because I ended up joining a different person's Kundalini activation session just to see, you've trained with this particular school. Let me see what it was like in comparison because this school was very popular. Um, and it was exactly the same, but the element for me that was missing was integration. Um,
Mhm.
because I remember speaking to someone that was joining. I was like, "Oh, how did you find the session? How did it go for you?" And they were like, "Oh, I love it. I come 2, 3 times a week and I activate all the time. And, the more intense, the better." And I was like, "Okay, but then when do you get time to integrate?" And they
Mhm.
had no idea about what I was speaking about. And I thought that's really interesting because I know this practice is and has been very en vogue in the last couple of years. But for me, that felt like I felt sad that you're not really understanding the energy that you're working with. And B, I was also slightly afraid for them because if you're constantly activating your Kundalini and you're not grounding that energy, how is that permeating into different aspects of your life? It's kind of like, people that sit with plant medicine and they do 2 or 3 medicines a year and they don't integrate the lessons, but they're like, "Yeah, I sat with ayahuasca like 2, 3 times," and you go off about your day to day as if nothing has happened. To me, that it doesn't feel respectful to yourself, not even just
Mhm.
the energy, but to your own self, your own energetic body, because there's this spaciousness in between where there's there's a gap between your level of understanding with what you're working with and what you're receiving. And this can be quite dangerous if you're not careful, if you're not anchored into your own uh, source oneness within yourself.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. But I do think that it can catch up with people. I also feel that that's true too, that sometimes when there's a newness and an excitement and they're just like, oh my God, I've never experienced something like this in my body before. It's like almost like maybe drugs or a peak experience that people are
Yeah.
just so hungry to have that. And that's also understandable that there's just like there's an excitement, like a puppy energy, like I want more, like how can we get more of this? But I do
Yeah.
think that it's like when you're constantly stimulating the system, it might not be recognizable right in the moment, but it is gonna come to a point, like all of these things do add up. It's not gonna not catch you.
Mm,
So it is gonna have a breaking moment where it's like, yeah, your nervous system can't take in anything more, or there's just like, I think also there's a lot of life changes that happen and it's best to take it slow in that way so that you can also, like pivot with each little aspect that needs to change. And so then it's like if you haven't really pivoted, but all of these energies in your body are changing and then externally things are changing and we haven't like had that equal meeting of like, yes, I've changed and I've allowed my reality to change with me, then I think it can get to this phase where it's just like really confronting or really overwhelming or like, yeah, you have to like take a break and you don't know what to do and now you need all the support because you didn't take the steps like the slower pace like step by step to kind of change as things were changing. And I think that's also like a reason why that people can say, oh, it's so dangerous. Like if you misuse it, it's definitely dangerous.
mm,
If you don't actually respect it and take the precautions and kind of look at it with more of this like, yeah, a wholesome foundational step by step process, then yeah, it cannot be good. Like,
yeah,
it can take
totally.
some time to unwind and work through all of that if you haven't also added in the care that's needed to be with the work that you're doing.
Mm, mm. Yeah, totally. And I think there's also this confusion that Kundalini activation is the same as Kundalini awakening, which is separate, in my opinion, and just in the nature of how this energy works and how we work with it in the field. What would you say is a defining factor for you that separates the two?
I think that it's hard to put a clear indicator on the separating factor because I think the way that consciousness opens up, that is something that's really hard to define. So if we're just talking about pranic energy opening
Mhm.
up versus consciousness, more consciousness in the body opening up, it can look exactly the same on the outside.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I think is so clear or that someone else can also um, kind of dictate for us, right? I think that it's more if every session you're going to is just like happy and joyful and light, and you're not really seeing there's like external things that need to change. Okay, maybe we're in just the beginning processes, but there is going to be a point where this consciousness starts to open up in your system, and that's something that's really in its own nature on its own times. We're just continually creating the conditions to do so and to have that happen. But for me, it's not. It doesn't have to be so separate in the Kundalini activation versus the Kundalini awakening. There doesn't have to be a clear line because really, I think these concepts, it's like, um, who's going to be the master that's going to tell us that's going to be one way or the other? Like,
Mm,
energy can also open very gradually, and actually, most people go through a gradual Kundalini awakening process. We hear
mm,
the horror stories of people going through a very big Kundalini awakening process, and that's, I think, the markers we have in our mind are these like rare cases. Um,
mm,
that people have had these experiences, and then we think everyone has to have a rare case to make it be Kundalini awakening, and that's not actually true either. That's
mm,
again just like kind of how we've absorbed information about it, and um, Yeah, I think that that's a bit of like a tricky question. It's a tricky thing within this space to be like, where do I stand on all of this?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, I think you answered it beautifully. And I think that's the point. It's not always easy to define things like consciousness in a very broad way when everyone's
Mhm.
journey is unique. My Kundalini awakening was completely different to some of my friends that had more of an explosive experience. But I also think that's part of your soul's journey to receive that and to be able to learn. Yes, even whilst it's absolutely challenging and you may be going through some things, how to actually hold that space, how to harness that frequency, and being able to also have a community of people that can support you. And I think especially because this work now is becoming more readily available to the average person, where you don't have to meditate in a cave for 100 years or whatever it might be to receive it. I think more of us are becoming more aware of the nuances. And I think it's important to talk about the nuances so we don't have this extreme in our mind, which is still quite prevalent actually to this day, where people are a bit afraid and they're not sure what it means and they're scared that it's demonic. And it's like, no, it's just your life force energy, nothing demonic about it. Um, but
Yeah, I have something to share. Oh, on
yeah,
that
go
too,
for it.
for
No,
your
no, go for it.
question. Yeah, I was reading this blog not too long ago that was like on, it wasn't on Kundalini, but it was on different energy healing practices and how different energy healing practices had different times of popularity based on what the world needed at that time. So based on
Yeah.
ascension, based on the energy of like the earth energy as well of like what people were collectively available for. And I thought that was really interesting to think about how we've seen Kundalini like become so popular, become so much more widespread, and how people are now more available for this. It is something that now people are talking about more. Their bodies are more ready for it as just as like a collective human race. The collective human race is starting to raise their frequency and raise their consciousness across the board. And then we have something that is so strong, so ready to like blast out the frequencies, the energies, the thought forms, the beliefs that are holding us back from really being in our purity and being in our highest level. And so it's also an exciting time in that way that now it's like this is becoming more accessible and becoming more widespread that so many people can tap into doing this to support our evolution as a human species.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. And what was I going to say? I had a light bulb moment as you were speaking. Yeah, it's necessary. Yeah, it hasn't come back, but hopefully it will. Yeah, it's so necessary during this time. And I think we also need to talk about discernment. If we are voluntarily going through these processes, because, if you're having a spontaneous awakening in comparison to just walking into a Kundalini activation, it's very different. Um, and the conversations that I hear at the moment, especially in the field of Kundalini, is that it's been tainted because of the actions of a few. What are your thoughts on that in terms of integrity, discernment, choosing the right facilitator for you?
Hmm. I think it's a big question. There's a lot of different ways to take that. I think with choosing the right facilitator, I think first it's really important to choose someone that energetically you feel that you get along with, that you resonate with, that there's a connection or a pull there, that there's also a safety with this person. And I think that really seeing what has their path been, what is their depth of experience been with this energy, so that we can't share from something we haven't experienced. The more range and depth of experience you have, the more you can see and spot and guide things as well. And like, where is the place that this person is sharing it from? I think is also really important too, because everyone can have a different motive, a different objective of what they come to share this work for. So I think that's really important. And it can also be hard to read between the lines what that is, because there's a lot of times that things can look on the surface one way when they're a little bit different on another way. And you might not realize that till later in that things are a little funny or a little off. Um, but I think really holding out to someone that you feel 100% like, yes, I'm in resonance with this person, then I think that's a good indicator. What about for you? What would you say?
Oh, love this. Um, for me, definitely someone that you feel safe with, seeing similar to you actually, like seeing someone that you feel resonance with their energy. How do they hold space? How do they make you feel? And and this may be a controversial take, you can walk out of a session anytime. You just may
Mhm.
not feel like you can. And I really want to share this because I think we forget that we are sovereign beings. And so if we are in a session where we feel like something feels off, I don't know why, the space doesn't feel clear or clean, even with the transmission, it's not like something's taking over you where you cannot physically get up and move. You are very consciously aware with your brain, like what is happening. Um, just from my experience, you can step up and leave. For me, the discernment comes from how are they not just simply portraying themselves, but how do they speak about the energy? Do they even have reverence for it? Or is it an egoic I make people move and wriggle around and all of these things? Um, and I've seen that a lot. And I've even heard, I had a really good friend of mine that had an activation and from someone else. So she had an activation from myself, and it was her first one. And then she received an activation from someone else. And now this isn't me being like, look how amazing I am. But it was really interesting for me to hear her experience of the second one. Because she said it felt like the facilitator was literally forcing her energy to awaken or do something. It didn't feel like there was spaciousness there. And I think
Mhm.
when you are in your beginning stage of becoming or being a Kundalini activation facilitator, you may feel like, oh my God, I need people to move, otherwise I'm not doing it. But actually the maturity and the level of discernment comes when you realize you're not doing anything, and B, the energy is always working. Even when someone is still and not moving at all, they may be having such a deep, profound inner experience. But if you yourself are having your ego come in the way, your insecurities, and you're not clearing them, that's when I think the distortion can come. I don't believe that a frequency can be distorted at all, especially when it comes from the light. And I think that's where it's interesting that I'm hearing some of the facilitators that were Kundalini activation facilitators saying that, because they're now operating in a new modality. And I don't think that's correct. And I don't think that's fair either. Um, and I think what I wanted to say before, as you were sharing about the different experiences with awakening and activations, is that these Kundalini activations come with a side of shadow work, whether you're a facilitator, whether you're a participant. And if you're missing that, then you're missing the point, because it's not just about ascension, it's about descension into the void, into that space of surrender, into the unknown, because this energy is calling you forward to step into your light in a way that has never been done before. And I think that's so powerful. But we as a society are so afraid of the dark. Whereas when you work with the light, you need to understand that darkness exists, and we cannot bypass everything into unity consciousness, love and light, as if we don't live in a 3D world. We need to understand that we need 1 foot here and 1 foot here. And how can I bridge that gap to allow participants that are here meet themselves here? And so that's another factor that I would say is really important when choosing your facilitator. If it's all love and light, I don't know how they're going to help you in the dark. So that's probably the key ones for me.
Yeah, I think that's so true because I think there's so much that gets revealed to us through the purification process. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for every single person. It's a lot to
Yeah.
yeah, see these things and be with these things and change these things and feel like, oh gosh, now, yeah, my eyes are open to all the things I haven't been, my blind spots about myself and the way that I work. And there's always going to be more blind spots too. I think that's also the other aspect of it. The more you continually expand, the more you're just finding more blind spots about yourself that you're like, damn,
Yeah.
I got to work on XYZ thing. And I think you can be in a different attitude about it. There can be an easiness and a softness in our eyes when we're observing these different aspects of ourselves. That, yeah, just being tender in those ways more than always feeling like you have to fix something about
Yeah.
yourself. But yeah, the journey never really ends when you're working on such a path of expansion.
Yeah, totally. And I really had this experience myself because I began my healing journey, what, 10 plus years ago. And it all began from a space of feeling that I wasn't enough or that there was something wrong with me. And so whenever I would, be in therapy or be with a new modality, I'd be like, oh, like, isn't this healed yet? Why have I got so much more? But then as I've grown up and as I've matured, I've realized, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with anyone. It's that mindset, that dual mindset of good, bad, right, wrong, which has its place in this world, of course. But it's like when you make peace that this is just the tapestry of life and this is one's own personal journey to love those parts, and not reject them, not constantly pushing them away, but understanding that those are our shadows. Those are the things that we need to see and give love and give that light to, so we can fully integrate them and then move on. And there's always going to be so much more that we can learn about ourselves from past lives, ancestral even, that we may be undoing a lot of conditioning from. Yeah, which I'm sure you understand too.
Lots.
uh, yeah. So it's a journey, and I think it's really important. I think it's really important to be gentle with yourself. Um, this isn't the military. We're not going into super intense training, but this is training for life as well. When you are able to do that inner work and give yourself that grace and compassion, that can also filter out onto those around you.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Mm.
think that's super and a super important learn lesson as you continue to develop on the path.
Yeah, and it's not always easy. It's not like you're going to be love and light all the time and not lose your temper and feel triggered or frustrated by things, but it's about looking inward and being like, okay, how can I integrate this? What is this showing me? Do I need better boundaries? Like what's coming up? And I think it's also really important to work with people that can hold you in this space. I think so
Mm.
often we think we have to go through this journey alone. And I don't believe that's the case. God, source, the one, the creator of all things, didn't create things in silo. They created things in abundance because we are meant to be in community as we move through this journey. So that's definitely been a lesson for me, at least. Like, I don't have to do everything alone. I can find my soul tribe. I can also ask for help. I can receive help. It's really beautiful.
I love that. Yeah, it's still sometimes those are lessons I'm still learning.
Yeah. And it happens. I was saying to my mum the other day, we think healing is linear, like it's like this, but it's not. It's a spiral because when you start to uncover old layers, it's simply because that's what you were ready for at that time. And as you begin to ascend and mature and grow in your consciousness, new things will be revealed to you that you may not have been able to hold back then.
Mhm.
And that can feel exhausting because you're like, what the hell? I thought I overcame this, and this new layer has now been presented to me. Like, come on, whatever it might be. But then you understand, okay, this is actually a lot deeper than I thought it was. And you bring in the compassion, you bring in the love, and it's that journey all the time, to come back home and to ourselves, because that's what we are. We as a soul are love. we are compassion. Um, and yeah, that's probably what I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was a beautiful share and just, yeah, really important for everyone to hear about all of the ups and downs that this journey actually really brings and how to navigate through it with a bit more ease.
Totally. And that brings me on to my next question. What would you say to someone that is new in this space that, feels a little bit afraid? Let's talk about safety when it comes to Kundalini activation and protecting your field and practical steps.
Hmm. Yeah, would you say this is someone that is new in a facilitator or new in a just as a practitioner? Because I think that answer might be different based on the stage that they're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, let's do both. Let's do a newbie that is really intrigued about Kundalini activation, but because of the honest conversations that we're having, they're a bit cautious, they're not too sure. What is it that you would share with them first?
Hmm. Well, it's a layer by layer process. I think that's what always is important to remember is that you can't clear the body all in one go. It doesn't all happen in one session. It definitely happens. You have a lot of control over the pace that it happens to by how much you want to go be in it, by how much you're ready to open, by
Mm,
how much you're also available to look at these things. So there is a degree of choice within like how far do you want to take the journey. So just stepping into one time, it's like it also is a practice on one hand that you have to continually work with it to get the full range, the depth of the benefits. Yes, one is going to change, but like you can't go to yoga one time and just think you're going to be stress-free the rest of your life. You're not going to just be able to do the splits in one yoga class, right? Like
yeah.
it's a practice. So I think that is also sometimes even a misconception about Kundalini in its way that it's like it's just like a one and done thing. Like they can
Mm,
just go like, yeah, maybe once every 6 months, which you can, but if you want to be a real practitioner, you got to keep working with it. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that can sometimes eliminate some of that fear of, um, yeah, of oh my gosh, what's it going to be like to get over that beginning stage of like getting in the door to
Yeah.
experiencing it. And there is an availability of really your receptivity, and that pathway of receptivity that you start to learn and to get into within Kundalini sessions. That's also something that it's a bit of a learning curve for a
Mm,
lot of people because we haven't had other experiences where we're just in a totally receptive feeling, being guided by feeling, being moved by feeling. And so
yeah.
that already that takes a while to get through in the beginning. So just yeah, starting to just know that yeah, it can be a little bit of a slow process in that. And then I would say more specifically, what would be the question around new facilitators getting
Mm.
started?
Yeah, so as we know, your gifts and your sensitivity tends to typically um increase the more you open yourself up as a channel. And so how would you protect your space? Because you mentioned boundaries earlier. So I'm really curious about that. So protecting your field, creating safety and spaciousness within. So when you do go into, say, for example, a crowded area or a party or whatever it might be, how can you actually hold that for yourself?
Mhm. Yeah, so there's a lot of different practices on just working with your sensitivity and how you hold your field in different ways. There's like a whole lecture I teach in my training on just sensitivity management because I've had to go through a lot within sensitivity management. But one just simple practice I can give on here for anyone dealing with a lot of high sensitivity is that when you're in a crowded place or you're in a conversation or yeah, things are just starting to get overstimulated, to really ascend your energy and your awareness into your back body. So oftentimes, like we're more open in this front body or we're more engaged here. And when we put our energy into our back body, the back of our heart, our spine, there's more of like a container in the body that's a bit built. There's a bit more firmness. And so
Mm,
energetically putting yourself, your presence, your awareness there in the back body, that helps you feel a little bit more within yourself because and just being that's like one tip, but another overarching theme in that is just being grounded within your own body because a lot of times when you start to get into these energetic realms, you're starting to tap into this subtle layer. It's easy to not be in the body. It's easy to be in the energy all the time. When you're in the energy all the time, you're more likely to take on other people's energy. You're more likely to be overstimulated. You're more
Mm,
likely to exert yourself in these other ways that you maybe not are even realizing that you're expanding past the energetic really limit of what's good for you because you're not as anchored within your body. And so just working on grounding in general
mm.
is one thing that's going to be really important so that, yeah, we can't have boundaries if we're not in our body. So
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
the key step right there is really working on what is your relationship to your body and to this container to then navigate the world through. And that's a piece that gets missed a lot as well, which is
Mm,
kind of what I even started with in the beginning, is that I think it was helpful for me to have all these years of developing my body and through my body, because then it's like it was able to hold the energy and understand the energy much more than coming at it from a space where I had just started to channel and I didn't have all of these
yeah,
kind of foundations and understanding about, which is the way that most people do come into Kundalini spaces.
yeah. 100%, honestly. And you need these anchors to bring you back. God, source, the one, whatever you want to call it. God gave us these bodies for a reason. I know everyone wants to be in ascension mode all the time, but it's like, no, we also need to remember that we've come down as these souls into these bodies. So it's about anchoring both within. And that is the practice. And I love what you shared about being in the field and um, it also becoming a little bit more overwhelming if you're not able to hold that space in a way for yourself, let alone for anyone else. Um, yeah, but that actually brings me into something quite something that I was wondering for you. What is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned whilst being on this journey? What's the lesson that you would share with your younger self?
Yeah, something that's been relevant just in the last months that I've always been reminding myself is, and I have the whole time along my journey, but I guess at this point I'm having more even like trust and like relaxation into it, is to really embrace wherever you are at now with the journey, with however your gifts are unfolding, with however many clients you have, with however, the way that your work is set up, like just know that it's really unfolding the way that it's supposed to. And I can think about it just in comparison to maybe different points of, and I just see it happen with my facilitators too, where I'm like, just trust how it's coming through instead of wanting more or wanting something else. Because I think so many times, and maybe it's my personality, I'm like, I want that and I want that and I want more. Give me more, more, more. But it's like we have the gifts that we're meant to work with, right? And I think in the last few months, I've had even more of this drop into, okay, I'm not trying to develop any other type of ability or gift that is just not naturally coming online for me because Kundalini actually came natural for me. Using my voice and channeling came natural for me. Dancing came natural for me. I didn't study any of these things. That's just like my biggest gifts within my own spiritual abilities. And I always wanted to be super psychic and always wanted to have all these other channeling abilities my whole life. And I was taking all these courses and trying to develop it. And it just was like, it wasn't inspiring, like to keep practicing, or it wasn't inspiring to do it. But there's a part of me that still wanted it. And I think that the more that you can trust, even more what the gifts are for you that are coming through, the more power that's behind them too, because everyone is unique in that. And um, I think that we all have different spiritual abilities from different lifetimes that start to come online within this life. But I think we also have important abilities that are for this specific lifetime. So though maybe you've heard from someone doing past life work that you could do XYZ in another life, and you're like, why can't I do it in this lifetime? Come on, I'm continuing to develop myself. Like I'm waiting. Like there are also specific things that we need to bring through in this particular time.
Yeah.
And so that's a way I think I've had just like more trust and exactly I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And um, I didn't actually have to look outside for it very much. I just had to
Yeah.
trust even more. And that people come to me for those unique aspects that I bring through within my work. And I can just like rest assured in that. And I see it
Yeah.
also happen like that's just like maybe on the spiritual gift side. But I see also it happen for people when they're like, but I want to more people in my sessions, but I want to work online and it's not working. And like for me,
Mm,
I actually did a lot online from the beginning. I'm really good at energy work online,
same.
and I never thought I would be good at energy work online. But it's
Yeah.
also really allowed me to create a lifestyle that I can travel and that I can connect to so many people across the world. And sometimes I'm like, damn, these people who just have like these in-person classes and they have their in-person community, it's just way easier for them because they don't have to
Yeah.
do as much marketing. They just like they fill up all their things just from being in one place and knowing the community all the time. And for me, it feels way harder because
Mm,
I'm like always on getting all of my clients through the online space, not through in-person work. So there is even more of a gap that I have to work through and fill. And
mm,
marketing, that would be a totally different thing if I just lived in the same community my whole life and just knew people around that came to my sessions. Way
yeah.
easier. But I also trust that for me, this online piece is a part of my it's a part of the mission that I'm on is to reach more people globally. And although it's much harder work in that way, I just trust that this is the path that I'm supposed to be on, and all these skills that I have now are also adding up and compiling and coming into something that's greater and bigger as the journey continues to evolve. And so I just have to relax into that. And yeah, it's just something that I think there's other things I hear a lot from facilitators where they want something a little bit different. And then
Yeah.
can we relax into how it's coming through and how it's being given to us right now and see the gifts that are around? Because then it just creates less inner tension,
Mm,
less inner like friction of what should be happening or how you want it to happen. And I think then actually more can even happen because we're not in this like trying to make
yeah.
it something it's not at the moment.
Yes. Oh, I love everything that you shared there. And I hear you with online because I primarily work online as well. And it's also, like you shared, it is a gift as well because you have that flexibility, you have that autonomy to be anywhere in the world and connect with anyone in the world, really, that's open to this work. And I also hear you with the aspect of marketing. But for anyone that's about to go and see Colleen's work or has already seen it, you will know that she's phenomenal with marketing, and she has a real air and grace about herself too. So definitely go and check out some of her work. And I'm really curious to hear, what are you most excited about for the rest of 2026? And how can people find you and your work?
Mhm. So I have quite a popular YouTube channel. If you just search Colleen Grady on YouTube, I have the biggest Kundalini activation YouTube channel. Thank you.
Ooh.
I started early on that one. It's been building with years. So you can find me on YouTube, Colleen Grady. You can find me on Instagram, kundalini.devi. It's my Instagram channel. For the rest of the year, I have an online training happening in May and June, which there's one for beginner and one for advanced facilitators. And then what I'm most excited for is I have two kind of new offerings as well. I have one that's called the Feminine Force that is actually taking more of my gifts around this vocalization, vocalized channeling, and dance, and bringing that more into the Kundalini space because I see already a lot of people who work with me. It's kind of in my transmission that they start to pick up these new ways of connecting with the energy and transmitting it. So yeah, we're going to be cultivating more of like these feminine aspects that come through with Kundalini and how to be more in the body and how to be more in our power when we are expressing and channeling and running energy. So that will be coming soon in Vienna next month. And then I'm really
Amazing.
excited to go back to Egypt. My Egypt group from last year was like even writing me a lot this morning. Yeah, I can't wait to go be back in the temples and to do energy work in the temples. And Egypt is something that's like on my mind every day. Like once you feel like you've really plugged into there, I
Yeah.
swear it's like Kundalini activation for the Olympic players. Like it's totally a next level of being in the field and working. And yeah, I'm just so excited again to go back in November and be in all of the beauty because there's on the trip, like we would not even be able to take in how beautiful everything was day after day. Like,
Wow.
and I, it's a crazy experience to be like, things are too beautiful. I'm almost sick of beauty. Like, that is next level. Gets a
Oh my
lot anymore. Like,
God.
how could it be even more? Oh my God, beautiful. But
I
I'm
love
excited to
that.
go be in the richness of that beauty again and just, yeah, be with other Kundalini facilitators and be in the temples and be activating the temples and,
Mm,
experiencing more of our divinity there. So that will be in November. Yeah, I'm really looking forward.
amazing. Amazing, amazing. I'm so excited for you. And I know that we spoke about this before, but I am so feeling the pull to go to Egypt. I have for quite some time. And so you never know, you might see me there in November.